Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Turner. This is, once again, the Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things podcast. We're here at Foley's Fitness in Scarborough, Maine today. I'll just back up a little bit and reset on what we're doing. We're getting out, we're talking to people that are kind of doing neat stuff. And we've talked with athletes, with business owners, and some people struggling with health issues. So today we've got an interesting guy to talk to. He's Mike Foley's brother. He's Jim Foley. He's a Westbrook native. We got to pay the rent here for a second, Jim, and tell everybody that you're Mike's older brother.
That's right.
Okay? So he wanted me to make sure I said that. As I said, Jim grew up in Westbrook, Maine. He's a three-sport athlete. He went on and played basketball and baseball at UMaine, where he played a bunch of different positions, and actually went to the College World Series. So that's pretty impressive. Not too many people from Maine get to do that. He's got 5 children. He's married. When he got out of college, Jim was hired by Unum, sent out to Texas, and kind of hit the fast track on the corporate ladder. He's got a colorful past, which included about a 4-year stay in prison. So we're going to talk about that and break that down a little bit, and I'm going to let him tell most of that story. So we're sitting with a guy that's been down and out, and he's back. He's been back for about 11 years. We're going to talk to him about what he's been doing since then, what he's been successful at, what are the positives and negatives, the impact on his family, and all of those things. So he's a hard driver. He lives in Tennessee right now.
That's right, Memphis.
In Memphis, and he's back. And like I said, he's Mike's older brother, one of them. And so we're interested in hear your story. So Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob, and pleasure to be with you. A little bit about myself. Grew up in Westbrook, Maine. As you mentioned, as I think about growing up, is that wonderful family. Grew up Catholics. My mom and dad went to church every day when they retired, so we had very, very good values with things. When I take a look at high school, my life revolved around sports and my friends. That was what was most important to me, etc. On the sports side of things, I just put a lot into it, but one of the things I'm a little bit disappointed with is that the way my day was depended on how well I did in sport. So it was kind of a silly way to live, but
so far we're still pretty similar.
That's right. So anyways, but friends, just absolutely great place to grow up. I tell people often about growing up in a mill town. I didn't know anybody rich, but I didn't know anybody poor.
Right.
We were all the same with things. It was a great place to grow up. And then, as you mentioned, I went up to the University of Maine. Very, very good experience up there with things. And then I started in sales with Unum and sent me to Dallas, Texas with things, and had a real good experience selling with them. I did really well. I was Rookie of the Year. I tended to be one of their top salespeople with things, and I just absolutely loved the organization. Bunch of great folks at Unum, and it really gave me a chance to develop my skill sets there, etc. And then in 1989, I was in the management development program, and that allowed me to go over to Memphis to open up the Memphis office for Unum with things. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So, small town athlete goes up and makes it, fairly solid at UMaine. Now you're out, you were in Dallas?
In Dallas.
For Unum? Okay. All right. And so you were climbing the career ladder, all right? Very successful. And then all of a sudden, what happened?
Well, is that so? While I was managing the Memphis office, is that I hired a bunch of great people. I had the chance to open up the office, and I just always got a tremendous amount of joy and satisfaction out of hiring young people that really wanted to succeed and just helping them grow and watch them grow. So it was an absolute fabulous experience for me. In 1998, I was promoted to regional vice president. That was a big job with the company. I had a number of offices that reported to me, etc. And then on my birthday of December 21st, 2006, I pled guilty to mail fraud and making false statements with things.
Wow.
And a little bit around what took place is that, first of all, I take complete responsibility with things. I've got no excuses for what took place. It's all on me, but basically I was involved in sharing commissions with a broker, which is absolutely a no-no in the insurance business. So the way that Unum, as well as so many insurance companies, distribute their products is through insurance brokers. And I worked on the company side of things, and I got caught up in sharing commissions, which was absolutely wrong and against the law, and caused me to go to federal prison on May 29th of 2007.
So this wasn't a small thing, right? I mean, it somewhere in the tune of $6 million.
About $6.6 million, right? So it was, significant amount of money with things.
So what's that like? I mean, obviously, you know, of course, everybody screws up in life, right? That's a pretty big one, right? You didn't kill anybody. White collar crime, really. I mean, so it's a kind of a business thing. Not good judgment. So you mentioned you had 5 kids. So how old were the kids when that happened?
Yeah, it is that. So while I'm working with Unum, great experience, love the company, love the people, and had 5 kids. So when I went to federal prison, I had one that was in the 7th grade, my youngest. I had 2 in high school and 2 in college. So I think any time that you go into federal prison's a terrible time, but that was my situation, and I was 49 years old.
Okay.
So kind of at the time where things should have been going a lot better for me, and hit that kind of life's plane crash, or, you know, basically drove life in the ditch, so to speak. So it was, and it's all my fault. So that was probably the most difficult side of things, is I had nobody to blame but myself.
Yep.
And so essentially when you take a look at, well, why did you do it? Well, I wanted more money. And so it was a tempting opportunity that came to me, but that's probably an excuse. I did it because I wanted more money with things. I had a lot of faulty thinking, like thinking that I wouldn't get caught.
Right.
Obviously, if I thought I was going to get caught, you never would have done it with things. One of the strengths I had is that I really believed in certain things, and once I decided to do something, I just went forward with it. And that was just one thing where I made an absolute terrible decision, and it just has absolutely been a terrible situation.
Changed your life.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I screwed up a really, really good life, and hopefully can get things back on track.
Yeah. So you're 49 years old. You're headed to prison. You got 5 kids. What do you say to them?
Yeah, is that
I
brought the kids together, and I told them that I had made a terrible mistake. I made some wrong decisions with things, and I was going to go to prison. And I can still remember the day on May 29th, is that that morning I say goodbye to all the kids, and obviously they're crying and they're upset with things. I had to report at 12:30 with things. So you report into prison, and ultimately they tell you to take off all your clothes for the infamous strip search with things. They want to make sure that you're not taking anything in there. They give you the orange jumpsuit, so the clothes that you have on are boxed up and sent back home. And it was right at that particular point in time that I knew my life would never be the same.
Yeah.
And from there, they handcuffed and shackled me, and they put me in the van to go out to the prison facility with things. And I arrive at the prison's facility, and I can remember, so it's May 29th, it's warm, coming up on just before Memorial Day weekend was just before, and you got the orange jumpsuit, and you go walking in the prison yard, and you got a little bag of toiletries, and there's about 200 guys that are in their green uniforms, you're in the orange, and they're just all looking at you like, here's the new guy coming in.
Right.
Yep, fresh meat with things, etc. And it was just a really, really odd and different experience. They give you a card. You're basically shown to where your cell is, etc. And I went over there, And I just couldn't believe that at the age of 49, that now here I am in federal prison. And as I was driving to the facility, all I could think about was my kids and them crying with things, etc. But what made it so hard is that it was all on me.
Yeah.
And so how do you overcome when you absolutely drive the car of life in the ditch?
Yeah, this wasn't something that happened to you.
Yeah.
This was self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted. It's absolutely all on me. And if there was somebody that I could have blamed, but it was with me, and I can't tell you how bad I beat myself up, which I think prison's supposed to do, right? I mean, I think that's
part of the rehab. I'm sure.
I think that's part of the rehab. But I just had such embarrassment, and there was so much shame and regret. And what's interesting for me with it is that I just never really gave much thought to shame. You know what I mean? It was just, and I had such shame, and I was like, God, when I thought about my family, and I thought about all the way back to kindergarten.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about being taught by the nuns over at St. Mary's School, and they taught us right from wrong.
Right.
And now I'm in federal prison.
Because you came from a good family. You know, it wasn't like you came from a family of career criminals.
Yeah, no, and I thought about all the people that I let down.
Yeah.
So all those people at Unum Memphis that I hired and were part of things, I just let those folks down by the decisions I made. And it absolutely was just, an experience where you really break yourself down. And I can truly say that it causes you to go to rock bottom. And I think that's what the system's supposed to do with things. I think it's
mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished with things.
So you're in there. Like, what's a typical day? You know, what kind of challenges did you face in there? And you know, how do you you're just sitting in there staring, just doing time. You know, how'd you stop from going nuts? So early on, all I could think about was how I ruined a great life, how my family was doing. I worried about them, etc. And after a period of time, probably a couple of weeks, is that I recognized that if I didn't get control of my thoughts, I was probably going to go into a depression like so many of the folks in prison go into. Yep.
And I had been in the sales business and had been in sports, and you learn the importance of a good attitude and things like that. But I never really put it in the perspective of, okay, how would you deal with things in prison?
Right.
But my best life lesson for me in prison is life is how you think. Now, it sounds so simple with things, etc.
Mindset.
But I knew I needed to get my mind right with things. And as terrible as prison was, I needed to figure out how am I going to make the most of every single day with things, etc. And early on, it was interesting. Nobody wants to talk with you, etc.
Right.
It was like the first day in there is that I'm laying in bed and just kind of gathering my thoughts.
Right.
And this guy comes up, and he's kind of all straggly, and he said, everybody's got to carry around your prison ID. So you didn't go anywhere because if a guard came up to you, they wanted to see your ID. And he said, I'd like to get you a wallet so that you can carry your prison ID. And I'm like, okay, that'd be fine. And he says, okay, that'll be 10 mackerel.
10 mackerel?
10 mackerel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so obviously you don't exchange money in there.
Right.
But the method of exchange was the can of mackerels. It used to be stamps, but it turned into mackerels with things. And I'm sitting in there and I'm saying, I've been in prison for about 45 minutes and I already feel like I've been hustled, that somebody's going to be making me a wallet with things, etc. And nobody else said anything to you, etc. So that was the initial experience. And then the other part with it was I never talked with anybody that went into prison. I didn't know what things were going to be like, but at 10 o'clock, the lights go out. And Bob, at 10:01, it was like 3 jet engines in there with all these men snoring.
Yeah.
There was one guy right next to me. His nickname was Chainsaw. And I don't know how anybody in the world snored as bad as this guy. Had some issues with
So they put the new guy in with Chainsaw.
Yeah, and anyways, I mean, guys used to punch him and kick him because they'd keep him up all night. But anyways, that was one of the things I'm like, well, I thought about a lot of things, but I didn't think what the snoring was going to be like at 10:01.
I don't know that my first move in prison would be punching a guy named Chainsaw.
I didn't do it. Just other people did. Just for the amount that goes to show how loud he snored with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, that was kind of the way that things were. But then I worked extremely hard to make a good use of my time, and I did a bunch of reading. I did a lot of writing with things. There was a number of things that I wanted to study. Things like, I've always been a workout guy, so I wanted to study health and nutrition and things along those lines there. You're able to get a great workout in prison.
Yep.
Not the best environment, etc. But you basically got to live the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
And you basically learn to control what you can control. And the problem was, most guys spent all their day complaining about things that they couldn't control.
Right.
Yeah. And so what I tried to do was do that. And then at the same time too, is that I loved my job. I was in education.
Yep.
So that was a great place to work in prison. But what was best about that is that I got to know a lot of guys that were in there really well. And to me, as I got to know the guys that are in there, I felt even worse for being in prison because I had such a great upbringing.
Yep.
And some of these folks that were in there just grew up in the hardest circumstances. And I'm not making any excuses for anybody that's been in prison with things, etc. If you did something wrong, you deserve to go to prison. But these guys grew up, so many of them, in really tough environments. And I had the best mom and dad, the best parents, and I just absolutely screwed up. And it just made me feel worse.
Yeah. How often were you able to see your family?
Is that I was fortunate from the fact that the prison that I went to was about 45 minutes from our house. And so my family, particularly my wife, was unbelievable. She'd come up to visit each chance that she could, which was basically Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a unique environment in terms of what you visit in, but she was fabulous. And I told the kids I wanted them to live their life, and I didn't want them to think, oh, I got to go visit Dad in prison.
Right.
But they were good about coming up to visit too. So I was one of the few that was so fortunate to have visits with the family with things.
Yep.
So, and then I spent a period of time down in Montgomery, Alabama. In Montgomery, Alabama, the prison was about 6 hours from home. And I had told the family I didn't want them to come down because all I could think about, if anything happened, and they're coming to visit me in prison. So my wife came down a little bit when I was down there, but I really didn't want them traveling.
How long were you down there?
I was down there a little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So your marriage survived.
The marriage survived, and it is all a compliment to my wife. Mm-hmm. So when you're in prison, you, over time, nobody wants to get to know you initially, but over time you get to know the different folks that are in there. And all these guys are getting what, they'd call in there the Dear John letters, and they'd be like, oh God, so-and-so's wife's leaving them,
yep.
And so many problems or issues took place. And guys would come up to me and they'd be like, Foley, are you worried about your wife leaving me? Leaving you?
Yeah.
And I would say, now this has nothing to do with me and everything to do with her, is that she's not going to leave me. And it's like, I'm no romantic guy or anything like that,
yeah.
but I just know her values. And with her values, I just knew that she was going to stay with me, etc. I feel blessed with that. And then probably what I feel most fortunate is just the relationship now that I have with my wife and the kids. It's really, really good with them. So anyways.
Well, so you did about 44 or 51 months?
My sentence was 51 months.
Yep.
And the federal system is that you got to do 85% of that. I had one little hiccup in prison that's a whole separate story that caused some challenges. But yeah, I ended up doing 44 months in the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like when you're 2 years into that, and are you just kind of in a groove where you're like, all right, I'm doing my time, we're just checking the boxes, going through this, we're gonna get through it, we're on the downside of it. Did you have a point where you were like, okay, I can do this?
I don't know if there was ever the point where you said, I can do this, because
You don't really have a
prison,
choice.
yeah, because prison's just a terrible place because you lost your freedom.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean with things? Is that so you can't go to the kids' ball game, you can't go out to dinner, you can't be with your friends. So it's a terrible place. But you nailed it. You don't have a choice, right?
Right.
You're locked up with things, etc. And so you simply deal with it while you're there. But I think the biggest thing is that you do your best to put together a plan for that day. And I would put a plan together for the day, and I would take it a day at a time with things, etc. And the other little thing that was interesting, another good lesson that I learned in there was gratitude. Now, I've always been grateful. I'd heard some things about gratitude, but I thought, well, that seems kind of fluffy for me.
Right.
But what I had just found for me is that when I was in prison in the morning and I would say my prayers, I'm a Catholic, and I became really in a good position spiritually with things, etc. But then I just would take some time to think about each of the kids and my wife, and a smile would come to my face. Just had a lot of good memories with them. So I really did my best to get the mind control. And I felt like I was pretty good at it before, but prison gave me the chance to get my doctorate in basically mind control thinking. And like I said, the best lesson for me was life is how you think, and I needed to really think, really think about good thoughts with things.
Yeah. What are some positives that's a pretty negative experience. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that, right? In there for 44 months. What's a positive that came out of that for you?
I don't think that there will ever be a time that I say, hey, looking back, prison was actually good for me, because it was terrible, and I always just feel horrible for what I did, as well as what I put my family through.
Sure.
So I don't think that I will ever get there, but there are so many life lessons. And so now on the other side of it, etc., I recognize that every day is a gift from God. So there'll be things that go on, and people might be complaining with things, and I just feel the most blessed and fortunate guy. And so if you can take every day, no matter how it goes, and just feel super fortunate and very blessed with things, and I really want to make sure that I never forget that prison experience, because it keeps me positive on all the wonderful things that I do have going on today and a part of today.
Yeah, you've got a good perspective. Do you have, and I'm sure that probably didn't go over real big with your family and friends and just extended network. Do you have people that have written you off and don't speak to you today as a result of what happened?
I feel blessed that my family, my brothers and sisters, and all my close friends have stayed with me all the way. And it doesn't happen often in that particular circumstance. I do know, as I've come into the business world, when you take a look at the interaction business-wise, if I'm trying to do business with you, Bob, it's all about establishing trust.
Right.
And at some point in time, early on in any of the business discussions, I let people know that I'm a convicted felon. Well, convicted felon says don't trust this guy, right? I mean,
Fair,
obviously,
fair. Yeah.
you're a felon with things, etc., and I want to let people know about my past, etc. So I clearly know there's been numerous business opportunities that have just been not taken place simply
Right.
because of that. And I always come back, that's all on me. That's my fault. People got opportunities to buy from all kinds of different folks, and why do you want to possibly subject yourself to getting engaged with a convicted felon?
Yeah.
So that one's on me.
We spoke a bit on the phone leading up to this, and then again today. One of the things that you touched on a couple times is paying Unum back. Where are you at with that? The number was about $6 million, right?
Yeah, it is that what I was involved with was $6.6 million. I've got about $2.2 million to pay him back. One of probably my number one goal financially is to get Unum paid back. They were a great company. They gave me a great opportunity. And so, basically on the pay that I get, a certain percent goes to paying them back, etc. And so I hope to get that done. I'm getting older now with things,
Yep.
etc. But I've got a really good mindset in terms of I've always loved business. I've always loved to stay active. I've got the mindset that I'm working till they put me in the pine box. So I think I'll get them paid back before it's done, and that will just give me a lot of joy and satisfaction that that's one of the things that I got accomplished on this big blemish that I have.
Well, it's one thing to do the crime, do the time, right? If you just got the time to do, so to speak, not to minimize it. You come out and you've got a steep bill to pay, So that's I'm sure that hangs on you, and you've had to live your life and try to. You've been out, what, 11 years now?
Yeah, I've been out 11 years.
So that's
Yeah.
something that you've been working on. What have you been doing for the 11 years that you've been out?
Yeah, so I immediately got started. So I got out of prison March 15th of 2011. The next day I feel so fortunate because so many people just can't get a job. I got a job working for a company called Safeware that was in the warranty administration business. The guy that owned the company had a lot of confidence that I could grow revenues there. I was excited about learning a new field. So at Unum, we did the employee benefits. So
Yeah.
I've always loved the employee benefits as a business, etc. But I got involved in the warranty business then. And my plan initially was to stay about 3 or 4 years to help them get the company jump started, as well as the plan was for me to kind of get back into society. So in some ways it was a win-win, and I was very grateful for getting the opportunity to go to work there. And I ultimately stayed a little bit longer, about 6 or 7 years. And then in 2020, I started completely on my own in the warranty business with things. So what's the warranty business? Is that when you take a look at the work
you're the
that
guy
I do.
that calls me about my extended car warranty.
The
No?
business that we're in a little bit is it's more with the computers, laptops, and tablets. So companies are buying those. And then I do some work in the appliance side of things too.
Yep.
Working with appliance stores that sell, the refrigerators, the washer dryers, putting a warranty there. So that's what I've done. And then in 2017, Mike had called me about getting involved with him in the gym.
Yep.
And it was interesting. The timing was really good. I'm living down in Memphis though. And I was rooting things on because Mike was talking with some other people about doing some things here, but he wanted me to get involved with him to help him out on the business side of things.
This was a big play for Mike. I mean, we're going to talk with Mike in another podcast too, but I mean, you can jump into that a little bit. Mike was at World Gym. Mike is the, if you talk nutrition in Maine, his name comes up. He's the guy. So here's Mike. He's always talked with me about wanting to do a beautiful gym. Here we are sitting in it today. So you had a part of the strategic planning of that?
Yeah, is that So Mike was working with a real estate guy, and I'm just down in Tennessee rooting him on. I am Mike's biggest fan. I mean, I was 9 years old when Mike and his twin brother were born. I got to see them grow up. I've always loved kids and just had the best relationship with those two guys. And when Mike asked me to get involved, is that, number one, my wife's from Gorham, so she was excited about getting involved in a business back in Maine, give us a chance to get a connection here. I've always been a workout guy. I've always just wanted to stay as athletic as I can stay for my age.
Sure.
So if I'm 35, I want to be the most athletic 35-year-old Jim Foley can be.
Right.
And so that's been my mindset. So I was always at the gym, running, working out, playing basketball, doing the things there. So it fit in with my core values with things. And then it just simply came down to, it was like, oh my God, I would do anything for Mike. So I'm like, okay, well, this is neat. And I told Mike is that if I get involved with something, I'm very determined to get it done. So let's see if we can take a run at it. And as with anything in business, is that you run into all kinds of challenges. But what I tried to bring to the table is this. Mike Foley is one of the top fitness guys in the country. When it comes down to nutrition, like you said, he's so well known. But when it comes down to exercise, I mean, Mike's gone 25 years working out every single day for 25 years. The guy just lives this to the core. And so you nailed it, Bob. What I wanted to do is bring the strategy of the business. So I wanted to help with the business plan. I wanted to help with the loans, help with the designs. But this beautiful facility, for 25 years, Mike's been putting this together brick by brick, etc. And I just gave him a little bit of business guidance along the way, because I do love to talk about strategy. I just think you got to say, Mike, what's going to make us different? What's going to make us unique with these things here? And we spent a lot of time talking about those things. So basically, he talked to me in 17. We spent 2018 getting the plans together, getting the loans, the SBA loans, and then we started construction in 2019 and opened up December 1st of 2019. So,
and then COVID hit.
Yeah, is that that was where it just caused me to think, oh my God, am I just going to be a jinx with everything? I end up having my big fall with Unum with things. Now we get involved with the gym. And
were there any hurdles with this, with you being involved and just being candid with your background?
Well,
it was a net positive, I'm sure.
Is that I'm involved. So my wife's involved as the investor. I can't be involved.
Right.
So as a convicted felon. So, but she wanted to do that. I do a lot of the work and guidance with things. So there's nothing like illegal or being involved with it there. But it's like I can't go out and get a loan as a convicted felon.
Right.
So my wife's involved with this as Mike. I'm part of it, and then we've got the investors that are in there too.
Yeah.
So just everywhere you go as a felon, it always stays with you. I'm not saying that it's wrong.
You don't
I'm just saying
it
is. It's just the way it is, and so it's one of the. It's an indelible stain that I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
Yeah. You wear it.
You wear it. Yeah. Absolutely do.
Yeah. And I mean, in your case, I've talked to you a few times, and I mean, I wouldn't say you lead with it, but it's something that you're very open about.
Yeah, I'm so embarrassed by it, and I just feel like I got to get it out there. And it's so weird because all my relationships in business were built on trust, and I just was able to connect with people.
Right.
And I just want to get that out to them as soon as I can, because I don't want to be thinking, oh my God, what would it be like if Bob finds out I'm a felon? I just want to tell you.
Yeah.
So anyways, I do my best to to get it out there in a reasonable way. And to me, what was so hard is that it's not like, hey, take a look at the pamphlet on how you present yourself as a convicted felon. It was like
they don't give you a manual when you leave prison.
Yeah, I didn't get the manual with that. So I just felt like I needed to do what felt right to me, and that's just get it out and kind of take it head on.
Well, and you're helping your brother. There's no better.
Yeah. Now with the gym is that, so, we started out just with our mission on what we believe in is that to improve an individual's quality of life through exercise and nutrition.
Right.
And it's like, what's better than that, right? Mike's doing the nutrition side of things, lives it, breathes it. We got a beautiful facility in terms of place for people to work out. And I have found so much joy and satisfaction being in this business because you really are helping people in that manner. So it's I'm just so excited about being part of it. And this is Mike's deal, is that Mike has worked his tail off over the years, built an unbelievable reputation. I mean, he's the most caring guy that you can meet, and his clients are so close to him. So I'm just navigating a little bit here and there on the business side of things, but this is 1,000% Mike's, and I couldn't be happier. Is that my dream was to play for the Boston Red Sox.
Yep.
Didn't happen. Mike's dream was to have his gym, and here it is.
Here it is. You had a little
good for Mike, and I'm so happy for him.
Well, how often do you get to Maine?
I get to Maine once a quarter. So I come up every 3 months.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was the nice part with it, is that when we lived away, we'd always come up to Maine in the summer.
Yep.
Kids were out of school, and so they always had, a nice chance to get to know Maine, etc. But what really interested me when Mike said about get involved, it's like, God, it would be great to have something that brings me back up to the roots, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed that, and that's where we're a small company, not that we have a quarterly board meeting, but we like to get together to review the business with things, and
Absolutely.
we have our weekly calls, etc. But I like to get up every 3 months.
So are your kids around you, or how old are they, and what are they up to?
Yeah, so my kids range from, the youngest is 27, so the one that was in 7th grade that when I went into prison, and my oldest is 40.
Okay.
So they're all about 3 years apart. They're right in that range. They're doing great. Is that the 2 boys live in Memphis, which is where we live.
Yep.
And then the 3 girls all went back to Dallas.
No kidding.
So the 3 girls live in Dallas with things, and I'm blessed to have grandkids in Dallas and in Memphis. And the nice part is when I get over to Dallas, I get to see all the girls and the grandkids.
Yep.
So that works out great. And then my boys both run their own business in Memphis, and my youngest, he majored in risk management. He's in the employee benefits business. So that time that I lost with him in prison, I love now giving back to him now in terms of trying to strategize on how he does some of the things that he's doing with things, and love giving him ideas and thoughts on how best to approach that business.
Well, it's interesting as a parent too, when you go from being kind of dad to go into having an adult relationship with your kids, right?
Yeah, just it is so special with things. And now the chance that I get to work with about 3 of them on some things business-wise, I get so much joy and satisfaction out of that. So you nailed it with things. Well said.
You got quite a story. They say everybody's got at least one book in them. Would you ever write a book?
Think
anybody buy it?
I've written a book, and I need to have the courage. Yeah, I need to have the courage now to get it published. Part of what's
is it about your experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of and more. I'd almost like to have be the book for felons. You know what I mean? Because I would like to help them understand what you need to do to reinvent yourself and to kind of get back on track with things. Is that it's, one of the buzzwords is reinvent yourself and how do you change? But as a felon, you really need to do that. But how in the hell do you go about reinventing yourself, etc.?
Right.
And I just gave that a lot of thought with things, etc. And that's kind of the book. And I thought, boy, if I could get that to felons so that when they're getting out, is that they've got a little bit of a roadmap on what to do. That's what I'd like to do. So,
well, I think it says a little something about you that you got out and got a job the next day. You didn't waste any time. You didn't kind of sit home and say, well, I'm going to take a break and consider my options. You got a job and went set about reinventing yourself.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I've always thought of myself as an action guy, right?
Yeah.
Just want to make things happen with things, etc. And so, anyways, just needed to jump right in and start facing society again.
What, there's a bunch of people watching this. What would you say to somebody that's like, he's a criminal. I'm going to listen to what he says. How do you deal with that? I wouldn't say haters, but somebody that's that's not buying your story.
Yeah, is it so? First of all, it's all on me. So I have no excuses. If anybody wanted to feel that way, I feel that I put that on myself. So
Sure.
so it's all on me.
They're entitled to that, right?
But what I learned in prison, because those first few days when I'm sitting in there and I'm thinking back to kindergarten and I'm thinking back to my parents and my high school and college friends and just beat myself up, I was like, are you just a fraud?
Right.
I mean, who in the world have you just been lying to yourself for 49 years and you're not a good person? And finally, as I started to forgive myself, is that I said, Jim Foley's not a bad person. Jim Foley demonstrated some really bad behaviors. So now the situation is Jim Foley going to change and not do those bad behaviors? Right. And if Jim Foley's going to do those bad behaviors, send his ass back to prison, right? With things, etc. But if somebody's willing to change, then it's...
Well, it doesn't always go the way it's gone with you either. When somebody gets out and they struggle with addiction or they struggle with depression and anxiety or whatever it is, and just the reintegration, I'm guessing, isn't always this.
I'm so fortunate and blessed, and I've tried to just guide some folks, but so many of them just can't get a job.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you take a look at it, and say you went to prison for selling drugs, and I got to know so many folks that were in the drug world in there, etc. And then all of a sudden you're running into roadblock. Well, you still got to get food, you still got to get rent. Is that they go back to the bad behaviors.
Yeah.
And I'm not justifying the bad behaviors, but it really is a challenge when every job application is, are you a felon? And then if it's like, box. Yeah. Hey, I'm not hiring somebody that's a felon unless I need to, so to speak. So
well, somebody took a flyer on you.
Exactly.
Was that person a connection from years past?
Yeah.
Knew you and stuck by you?
It was an old Unum person.
Yeah.
They saw my abilities in business, so they knew that I could go in and help them, but they recognized what I did was absolutely wrong, but I think they knew me pretty good at the core too.
Yeah.
In terms of what I was about, and then thought that I could really help them get that business off the ground with things.
Well, this story it's interesting to me because when Mike asked me if I remembered you, and it piqued my interest, and I said, you did something with investments, right? And then it started to come back to me. But I remember both of my folks worked at Unum for years, retired from there.
Great organization.
And so I say, hey, that company put clothes on my back for years. But I watched them, there was the merger of equals back in, what year was it?
98.
98. And, it took my dad, who had, basically had his whole career there, show up at work one day and say, hey, your whole division is out the door. Yeah. We've got an investment division in Chattanooga, and you guys are all done. Here's your paycheck, and, see you later. So, anyway, it was just very interesting to talk to you about it, because I do have some familiarity with the company. But what you did was pretty serious shit,
Absolutely.
And I don't, you don't outrun that.
Nope.
What I see is a guy that's out doing the best he can to live with it. Like I said, you don't lead with it, but it's not far behind because you're dragging it with you. It's a bit of a ball and chain, so to speak. But kudos to you for stepping up and reinventing yourself and taking the rest of your life as, per se, and really getting back to who you felt you were before it happened, before you made the bad choices. So this has been an interesting hour or so. I thank you for sitting down.
Thank you.
For the transparency and the vulnerability. That's what we're looking for when we get out and talk with people. And like I said, we've talked with business professionals, fitness professionals, people that are dealing. We have Jamie Logan on here, who's a member here. You might know Jamie. He's got Parkinson's disease. So we're talking with a wide variety of people. So when I got a chance to do this, I jumped at it.
Awesome.
And just get a chance to get to know you and talk to you. I think it's a cool story. Other than that 44 months, of course. But as we wrap up, is there anything that you would say to anybody that's listening, whether you want to add something about making better choices or being in business, or what is it that you'd like to share?
Yeah, just a few things that come to my mind is that ultimately the decisions that you make every single day is going to determine your future self.
Yep.
And I made some really bad decisions that I just didn't think that I was going to get caught. But it seemed like everybody that I met in prison didn't think they were going to get caught, etc. And so one message would be is that if there's things going on in your life and you know they're wrong, Bob, I was in church every Sunday, saying my prayers, taking the kids to church. I'd go to confession and I'd talk about, well, I'm involved with some business impropriety, and then I'd be out involved in doing it. So,
right.
Just if there's some things that you're doing wrong in life, is that now's the time to turn things around before you do get caught.
It's never too late, right?
Yeah,
it's never too late to change your behavior. One of the things that you said that resonated with me is gratitude, and not a lot of people that have been through what you've been through would maybe look at it that way. And you talked about mindset a lot. So you've really, to conquer your own mindset is something that I'm working on that right now. Just having a positive mindset all the time and not letting negative stuff or extraneous bad things, affect your day. So to sit and talk with somebody like you, that's kind of, you're really a champion of that. You had plenty of time to work on it, right?
Plenty of time to work on it.
Yeah. So good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming today, and thanks for being on. It was a pleasure to get to know you and hear your story, and I'm looking forward to getting it out. Thank you guys for listening and tuning into it. Shoot us give us a subscribe on YouTube. You can check us out with Bob Turner on YouTube. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. This is week 10. No podcast ever makes it past 7, so thank you for helping us with that. We're at Foley's Fitness in Scarborough, Maine. I think next week we'll have Jim's brother Mike on, so we'll talk more about this gym. I don't know how the sound was. That's going to be on Mitchell to get that tuned up for us, because we had people making shakes in the background trying to use the door. One guy almost walked across the screen. So we're having a lot of fun with it. Thanks for staying with us on this, and we'll catch you again real soon. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.